We'll get started. Welcome, everybody. My name's Tom Regan. I'm the 2020 chair of the Greater Royal Oak Democratic Club. And since it's January, the first item on the agenda is to elect officers for 2021. So first, are there any nominations for chair of the Greater Royal Oak Democratic Club for 2021? Arv.
Yeah, I would like to nominate Lauren Jasinski.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
And then Lauren Jasinski is not here. She's receiving a very special award this morning, which City Commissioner Shar Douglas is going to explain during announcements. But she did say that if she was nominated, she'd accept the nomination. So we have Lauren Jasinski nominated for chair. Are there any other nominations for chair? Are there any other nominations for chair? And are there any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, we'll close that. I'm sorry, Arv, go ahead.
I thought Shar's hand was up.
It was. I was going to move that we close nominations and elect Lauren by acclamation.
All righty, that motion's been made. Anybody second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of electing Lauren Jasinski for our chair for 2021, please indicate by waving your hands at the camera.
Woo.
If there's any opposed, go ahead and unmute yourself and say you're opposed. Okay, it's unanimous. Lauren's going to be our chair for 2021. Now, ordinarily, she would take over right now, but since she can't because she's not here, and Shar will explain why she's not here, she's receiving a very special award this morning. I'm going to go ahead and run the elections for vice chair, and then I'll turn it over to the vice chair. So are there any nominations for vice chair of the Greater Royal Oak Democratic Club for 2021? Paula.
I'd like to nominate Arvin Reddy as vice chair for the club for 2021.
Arvin Reddy, do you accept that nomination?
Yep, I accept.
Alrighty.
Thanks, Paul.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair of the Greater Royal Oak Democratic Club for 2021? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, we will close it. Does anybody want to make a motion similar to the last one?
I make a motion that we close the nominations and elect our by acclamation.
All right, is there a second? All righty, seconded by Lisa Haynes. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of electing Arvin Reddy as vice chair of the Greater Royal Oak Democratic Club indicate by waving your hands at the camera. Well, congratulations, Arvin. I'm going to turn this meeting over to you.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Okay, so, well, thank you very much. So I'm just a little bit confused. Do we go on to the next elections or do we go into the normal? Okay, so which position do we do? Okay, let's do treasurer. Are there any nominations for treasurer?
I nominate Ian.
Ian,
Accept.
Excellent. Are there any other nominations for treasurer? I don't see any hands. Any other nominations? Seeing no other nominations, I'll accept a motion to close. Does anyone want to make such a okay? Okay, shall we approve this by acclamation? Oh yes, go ahead, Shar.
I move we close nominations and elect Ian by acclamation.
Okay, everyone who is in favor.
I second.
Oh yeah, second.
Second.
What?
Your vote didn't matter since they won unanimously.
Oh,
Okay. All right. Congratulations, Ian.
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have secretary. Does anyone have a nomination for secretary?
Yeah, and I move that we elect Rachel Andrews as recording secretary.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Any other nominations?
wow.
Any other nominations?
Chair, vice chair.
You don't even have me muted.
Okay, I don't see any.
I muted.
No.
Would anyone, should we, Shar?
You sure?
I move we close nominations
Okay.
and elect Rachel by acclamation, or Ian by acclamation.
No, we
Okay.
took
Is there
it.
any support? Okay, I see. Okay, I see support from that. Okay, so I will call the question. Anyone, everyone who supports it, please wave your hands. Any opposed? Oh wait, Bellum, are you opposed? Okay, I think that was just a delayed wave. Okay. Congratulations, Rachel. Okay, so I think the next order of business is well, to start the meeting as normal. So with welcome and introductions, is it anyone's first meeting or first meeting in a while? Please raise your hand.
Nominations for vice chair. Did I miss that?
Oh yeah, I'm vice chair.
Oh, that's right. Never mind. Okay. Too much running this morning. Sorry.
Yeah, it's too late, Lisa, if you wanted to prevent me from seizing power. Okay, but so is it anyone's first meeting or first meeting in a while? Please raise your hand or just hop in and introduce yourselves.
Well, it's my first meeting. My name's Monica Hunt. And I was recently appointed as the city to the city commission. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to start serving the citizens of Royal Oak. Just a little bit about me. I have been a resident of Royal Oak for the past 13 years. I live here with my dog, Gigi. You may see us walking around and she may bark at you every now and then, but she's a good dog. I've grown up in the area. I went to the Ferndale School District and lived in Oak Park with my parents who still live there to this day. And yeah, I'm just happy to be, more engrossed in the community now.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Monica.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who's first time?
Welcome, Monica.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome, Monica.
Thank you.
Hey, I'll introduce myself. I'm Emmy Zanotti. Moved to the district just yesterday. Closed on a house in Royal Oak. So I have lived just a couple miles south on the other side of 8 Mile for the last 3 years. And now I'm happy to be a Royal Oak resident. So I'll be seeing a lot more of everybody.
Emmy, where did you move to? Where in Royal Oak?
So I'm on Campo, just north of 10 Mile.
Okay, welcome.
Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Is there anyone else who's their first time?
Hi, I'm Allison Bone. This is actually my second meeting, but the first time I was too shy to introduce myself, to be honest. I've been a resident of Royal Oak for about a year and 3 months or so, but this is my first time as in a meeting as a paid member. So we'll count that. We'll say this is my first paid membership meeting. But I really like it so far. I like this area.
And where did you move in Royal Oak, Allison? I like where people live.
I am on Crooks and Normandy in one of the apartment complexes. And before that, I was in Auburn Hills.
Okay. Well, we're glad you're here. Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Me too.
Is there anyone else who would like to introduce themselves?
I can go.
Awesome.
My name is Alec Esparza. I've lived here for about a year and 3 months or so now. Got familiar with the area after doing some organizing with the Michigan League of Conservation Voters here, and nominating some candidates and knocking some doors, and kind of fell in love with the area. So came over here when I knew a few people moving to the area and have enjoyed it ever since. Yeah, a year and 3 months means I've only been here the majority of the time in quarantining, but I'm looking forward to, also seeing it outside of lockdown and stuff like that. And yeah, just decided to get this off my to-do list and actually start showing up. If I've had it on my list for a minute, but you know, Saturday sleeping. But excited to be here.
Awesome. Welcome, Alex. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. I think Lisa wants to ask you whereabouts exactly you live.
Stop it. It's going to be good.
Yeah, I forgot that. I'm on 12 Mile in Washington.
Okay.
Right next
awesome.
to what I think people refer to as like a Christmassy house that used to be. There used to be some big Christmas
yeah.
decoration house. Yeah. Yeah, just right next door to that.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
Okay. You get all the middle school traffic once we're back in school.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Did you
Excellent.
visit Luna for New Year's Eve?
For New Year's Eve. Club Luna.
Okay, welcome, Alex. Is there anyone else who'd like to introduce themselves? This has been great. Got a lot of new people for a new year. Okay, going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is announcements. Does anyone have an announcement? Feel free to raise your hand or use that raise hand button. I see that Commissioner Douglas has an announcement.
So, thank you. And I just checked. We have 100 people signed into this meeting.
Holy cow.
Holy cow. Yay. Yeah. Lauren Jasinski is not with us today because she is attending a meeting of the Ezra Parker chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, of which I'm a member. And she is there because she is receiving the chapter's Outstanding Teacher of American History Award. So yay, Lauren. Receiving the award from locally means that she will also be a candidate for the statewide award, and then the state winner then is a candidate for a national award that comes with, last I knew, a $5,000 prize. And I'm going to point out that the person who nominated Lauren became acquainted with her because they're both precinct delegates. Lauren's civic activity has paid off both on behalf of our club and on her own behalf as well. So congratulations, Lauren. That's all.
Yeah. Are there any other announcements? Oh, okay. I think I see State Senator McMorrow.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. My quick announcement is Ray and I are due to deliver a tiny human any day now. So
I'm not delivering it. Doing the work. I'm just...
so it will probably be there'll probably be a break between meetings. I might be out for the next one or the next couple, but you will shortly meet members of my staff who are going to start popping in and giving updates on my behalf. So look forward to meeting them in the future. I will miss you while I'm out and recovering, and we'll bring a very tiny person.
Tiny Democrat.
A tiny Democrat to future meetings very soon.
Do you know what you're having?
A girl.
Oh.
We don't have a name yet. So, you know.
Lisa is a wonderful name. So
I posted on Instagram just updates and, you know, things like that. And the number of people who responded and suggested that we name her after themselves, it was like over a dozen people. And I just think that's the confidence we all need to carry 2021. So I love it.
Or a cute little Madison McMorrow. I mean, that sounds so cute. I don't know.
Awesome. That's great news. Okay, next I see Paul and Claire Vile have their hand raised.
So yeah, hi. It's hard to beat that announcement. I just wanted to acknowledge precinct delegates will be meeting coming this Monday night at 7 o'clock. There's about 16 who've responded to my email. We're going to be talking about the general election and our experience, and talking about 2021 and perhaps some actions that we can do to build the base. So just wanted to acknowledge that if there are any precinct delegates that didn't get my email, I will put my email in the chat and send you the Zoom link. We'll be joined by Nicole Beatty from the Andy Levin campaign and Mona DeQuee from the Michigan Democratic Party. So again, that's 7 o'clock on Monday, and any precinct delegate who wants to join, who hasn't already told me, please contact me. I'll send out a little agenda tomorrow. So thanks.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Paul. Any other announcements? Paula.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I couldn't find the raise hand button on my screen for some crazy reason today. But anyhow, thanks for letting me speak. Indivisible Fighting 9 continues to meet. We're going to start meeting monthly instead of bi-weekly, but our next meeting is this Wednesday, the 13th of January, and I'll drop our email address in the link. You do need to register, and just for security purposes, we ask you send us an email, and then we'll send you the link to the meeting. We are going to be polling our membership this month to ask what you'd like to work on. So now that we're no longer a resistance group, we'd like to solicit anybody's suggestions. If you're new to Indivisible, we're happy to have you.
Thanks, Paula. Okay, any other, it's tough to see, there's like so many people, there's 4 screens. So if you physically have your hand raised, please just give a shout.
I'm having the same issue as Paula. I can't find a raise hand. My screen seems different today.
Oh, I see it under the participants.
Yeah, mine's not there. It's very strange. Well, I just want to talk about the OCDP is having a inauguration watch party of sorts on inauguration day. Plans aren't completely finalized yet. It sounds like it's going to start about 11:15, 11:30. Everybody will watch the inauguration and then the inaugural speech together. Then they're planning some sort of activity afterwards. So it might be a fun way to spend your inauguration afternoon. Check out the OCDP Facebook page for more information on that.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Okay, okay. Is that Ray? Go ahead, Ray.
Hi. So building on what Tim said, I also want to remind any of the executive committee members of the OCDP that we have our January meeting this upcoming Tuesday. On the agenda is the appointment of the new committee chairs. So I absolutely love to have a full representation from the Royal Oak Executive Committee members to help to support Jody and the appointment of probably the most diverse slate of committee chairs that the OCDP has ever had. So, and if anyone has any questions about it, please feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, any other? I see Treva.
Hi, I'm a member of ROMPA, the Royal Oak Multicultural Parents Association, and we're looking for allies to occasionally attend school board meetings to support the goals and concerns of ROMPA. And there is a school board meeting this Thursday. I think it's January 14th. Yeah, at 7 p.m. And we do have some talking points that we would like people to raise. The first one is that we're very excited about the new board. And then also, since Governor Whitmer is recommending that the children go back to school in person by March 1st, we're also wanting to know what the plan is to protect minority students from any blowback from the election. I mean, in the wake of Trump's election, there was a build the wall chant at the middle school, which basically started ROMPA, and they're concerned, and I think rightly so, what kind of things are going to happen when the kids go back to school in the wake of this election. So anyway, if you would like any more, if you're interested, again, January 14th at 7 p.m., if you're interested in what the issues are, I'd be glad, just privately message me and I can talk your ear off for 45 minutes if you want to. Thanks.
All right. Okay.
One thing, even the meeting's at 6 o'clock. I don't want anyone to show up at 7 o'clock and miss half the meeting.
Oh, I think Erica told me the 6 o'clock time was for organizational meeting and that the regular meeting would start at 7.
The regular meeting will start immediately following, so it should start probably about 6:15 or so.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Trevor. Okay, so seeing no other announcements, let's move on to our guest speaker. Professor Deegan-Krause is here to speak to us about ranked choice voting, the Rank My Vote ballot initiative. Please take it away, Professor.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And nobody should call me professor because you know, all of this stuff, the stuff that I do is stuff that I do as a citizen rather than as an expert per se. I should introduce myself. My name is Kevin Deegan-Krause. I live just across the border from y'all. I'm a member of the Ferndale Democratic Club. I do teach at Wayne. I teach political science, and I know a whole bunch of you from different things that I've had the great good fortune to be involved in. And I was actually able to talk to your group a few years ago when I was working with Voters Not Politicians about getting rid of gerrymandering, which we did. And I continue to work with them, but I've been working with Paula and Indivisible and with another group that some of you may have heard of called Rank My Vote. And this has been a kind of sidelight for me, but it's something that I've actually been thinking about and working on for a really long time. My job at Wayne actually is to teach mainly about European politics. And I've spent a lot of time in countries that use different ways of electing people. And so it has long been a passion of mine to try and get people in this country to see that the way we do things isn't the only way to do things, and to talk about some alternatives. And I've been waiting for years for a group that was organized and credible to start talking significantly about not just getting our districts done right, but about actually changing the way that we elect people. So that's actually what I wanted to talk to you about for about 10-15 minutes, just to give you a sense of a different way of electing that has some real advantages. And I have to say, this is the first time really that I've ever talked to a Democratic group, to my own political party. I've spent a lot of time talking to libertarians and to Greens, even to some Republicans. So I'm really curious what you all think about this, and I really would value your feedback on this, to think about, you know, whether and how to make this kind of thing viable. We obviously need to do something to change how we structure our elections. This seems to me to be a really good way to do it. And so I'm really curious to be able to sort of talk to you and to listen. Arvind, would it be possible for me to share screen for a few minutes?
Oh, yes. Ian, could you make Kevin the
Yeah,
co-host?
is it not highlighted for you?
It
as an
is.
option?
It says it's the screen sharing is disabled at the moment.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and make you a co-host for now. That way you should
Thank
be
you.
able to do screen sharing.
I promise to use the responsibility wisely. All right, I'm in. So hold on just a second. Okay. So let me share. So let me just ask, first of all, can I get a thumbs up on volume and sound? Am I too loud, too soft? Everybody's okay with that. Second, can you see on the screen the Rank My Vote logo with the check marks? Okay, if those two things are in place, then we're ready to go. And let me just say, if your experience is anything like mine, usually by the time that someone's finished talking about something, I've forgotten the questions that I had in the middle. So, you know, just stop me in the middle, just yell it out if you've got any questions or any thoughts, because I really do want to hear what you all have to say. And I will try and go through this, be respectful of your time, and go through this as quickly as I can. So let me just start by saying that, you know, as I said, what brings me here is the desire for a better way of electing and a consciousness that just because we've always done it this way in the United States doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. And because I think there are other ways of electing that are better, frankly, almost any way of electing people, of counting our votes, is better than what we do now in the United States. We're using a system we inherited from Britain, which was already using it for a long time then. It's old, but it doesn't mean that it's good. And so we have better ways of doing this now. When the US was founded, people hadn't really thought about what's the best way to do a process of electing people. We've had a long time, 230 years since then, to think about it. We found better ways, and this is one of those. So I've been giving this presentation on behalf of a group called Rank My Vote. I've actually been talking about this for a long time, like I said, but Rank My Vote is a 501c3 nonprofit. It's all volunteers, and the group is really dedicated to this one idea, one solid idea of doing a better job in electing people, and that means changing the rules by which we elect people. And the idea of ranked choice voting, if you haven't heard about it, is just a simple change to our electoral system in which we gather more information from people, not just their first preference, but their second, third, and fourth preference. And then we use that information in an organized way to help make decisions that solves a bunch of problems that we have with our current system. So what I want to do actually is to take this system, we say it's so simple it fits on a t-shirt, to take this, to explain it a little bit, and then to get your thoughts about it. So really, these are the four things that I want to do really quickly. Show what's wrong. And one of the big struggles in this country, I suspect not in this audience, but we tend to get very accustomed to the way we do things. And so we don't necessarily always see the underlying problems, although I think people are increasingly starting to feel pretty sick and tired of the current system. So to look at what's going wrong right now, to look at how ranked choice voting can do a better job, give you a little sense of how it actually works, and then we can talk a little bit about how to get it. And I can tell you sort of what Rank My Vote is doing in this regard. Normally when I do these and we have a little bit more time, I ask people sort of what's gone wrong, like what do you see as a problem with the current system? And I hear a couple of things over and over again when I talk to audiences. And one of the first things that people see is this sense that they have to vote for one of the dominant candidates rather than somebody that they actually really wanted. When I'm talking to libertarians and Greens, I hear this about the general election, but when I talk to people, to Democrats in particular, even to Republicans, I hear this with regard to the primary. Like they're faced with the choice of, one or two major candidates. They prefer somebody else, but they feel like unless they're voting for somebody who can win, they're actually sort of enabling the election of somebody who's way on the other side. And the idea here is that, this is sometimes we call the lesser evil problem. People say, well, just vote the lesser evil so you don't get the greater evil. And there are lots of different problems that end up getting associated with this. I mean, people talk about, holding your nose and voting for the candidate who's the least bad, or voting for the lesser evil, especially the big one, not wasting your vote somehow. So we've got lesser evil, wasted vote, all these things. I mean, you've heard all of these over and over again. And all I want to say is these are not natural things that people do in election systems. They're things that people do in the American election system because we don't ask people what else they like. You've got in your heads lots of different ways of thinking about the world, lots of rankings about who you like most and who you like second most. But the current system that we've got doesn't ask you that. If it asked you that and had some way to factor that in, we could come to a lot better results because the current system yields all sorts of different weird kind of pathologies that just aren't necessary in the way that you do this. And we've gotten to this problem where, in a sense, it's not just that you can't always get what you want, but you can't even really feel like you can ask for it because people will tell you that you're doing something wrong or you're doing something stupid. And I have to say, given the way the current system works, they're kind of right. I mean, if your goal is to keep someone out of office, then by voting for a third-party candidate or by voting for a lesser, a smaller, lower-ranked candidate in a primary, you are sort of enabling the possibility of someone else winning. But the idea is it doesn't have to be that way, that it is possible actually to vote for the candidate that you want and at the same time have a second place vote, a second rank vote for the candidate who you think might have the most chance of getting elected. That's eminently doable with ranked choice voting. It can't do it in the current system, and that's what leads to some of those pathologies. The other thing that I hear constantly, especially around the time of primaries, is that what you see a lot of times is that candidates you don't like win because candidates that you do like, and there may be more than one, end up splitting the vote. And it's kind of paradoxical because if you can imagine a system with two or three sides, if one side is the bigger side, but it also attracts more candidates, and there's no way of regulating who those candidates are if everyone's free to run, well, then you often get a system in which the side that is most popular ends up with the most candidates, but then ends up splitting the vote. So we have this idea of the spoiler problem or the split vote problem, and if you can imagine a system where you've got two sides, or, an orange side and a green side, if the orange side has only 30% and the green side has 70%, well, the green side should probably win those elections. But if lots of different candidates on that side end up running, they can end up splitting that vote, and you can end up having the green side win, even though there's clearly a lot of folks on the other side, a lot more. So unless you're somehow regulating candidate entry, which is kind of what parties are for in the general election, but there's no way of doing that in the primary elections, you can often end up getting that lone candidate who represents the one fairly unpopular side, beating out all of the candidates who represent a much more popular side but are splitting up that vote. And those candidates, they get called spoilers because they dared to run in an election. Again, this stuff isn't necessary. It's just a kind of pathology. It's an artifact of the way we actually do our voting system. And my last presentation on this before COVID, we actually gathered in Troy. We talked about this to a nice crowd, and there was a young man who's 10 years old in the back, and I asked this question, and I asked actually about the Gore, Bush, Nader, Buchanan race in Florida, and I said, who's the spoiler here? Expecting people to say that Nader was the spoiler or Buchanan was the spoiler, and Trevor raised his hand and said, I think the system is the spoiler. And after everybody picked their jaws up off the floor because this kid had gotten it exactly right, I have to adopt this. Like, Trevor is exactly right. The system is the spoiler, not the people who dare to run. And the system is what wastes your vote, not the people who vote for somebody who they want rather than somebody who they think they can win. And again, this is an artifact of our system, and it's surprisingly common. So if you look at the 2018 race, 5 out of 14 candidates won with less than 50% of the vote. What that means in theory is that there is more than 50% on the other side of that race. So it may be that these are not the most popular candidate, but that two similar candidates just split the vote. And actually, in the most recent, 8 out of 10 won without a majority. So the question is, how do you produce a majority in these elections so that you can know that the right side is winning as opposed to just the person with the most votes? And we see this a lot in primaries. I talked to you a little bit about that, but if you take the Republican primary of 2016, there are these different kind of wings of the Republican Party. I'm using actually 538 sort of analysis here of what those wings were. What's pretty clear is if you add up all the votes and you look at where those votes are, there's no sort of clear side on that particular party. I mean, there's a block of voters here, there's a block of voters here, there's a block of voters here. They're all roughly equal in size. The only reason that one of those candidates actually wins is that the others split those votes, and it almost becomes sort of random which faction wins. It's not random in its outcomes because we can see what happens when this goes on. But if there had been fewer candidates over here and more candidates over here, maybe you get a different outcome in a much better world, frankly. But this is the kind of problem that we face, and it's not just the Republican side. Depending on how you want to think about it, and on the Democratic side, you've got multiple different kind of groups, fairly well behaved, fairly well mannered, within the Democratic Party. But again, who wins the election is really going to depend on how many people run on a given side, who withdraws from the primaries first and throws their support behind other people. These were perfectly natural things, but they almost become random. If nobody else runs over here, then maybe this is the largest faction. If some of the candidates on the other side don't withdraw early, then maybe the election goes in a different way. And I know there are probably people out in the audience with different preferences, and that's not a place I want to go. But what I do want to say is the outcomes almost become rolls of the dice, rather than a kind of systematic idea of saying, well, these candidates, this side is bigger than the other side. And again, all I'm saying is there are ways to avoid these artifacts. There are ways to avoid these little pathologies. And all you have to do to make that work is just ask people what their preferences are. I know who you like first, but who do you like second? Who do you like third? It's just a really simple way of going about doing it. So, I think we've got these problems with the current system. If we can go to a system where we ask people who else they want, and we can find an organized way of ranking those and using those to contribute to the victory of a side as opposed to an individual, we actually end up fixing those problems. So ranked choice voting does this. That's the nature of the system, and it ends up having a lot of ancillary benefits. And the first one is, because people don't face that spoiler problem, because they don't face that wasted vote problem, it actually turns out that you get increased satisfaction and you get higher voter turnout. A bunch of cities have used this across the United States, so we have a little bit better sense of how these things work, and a variety of academics and other groups have done some studies on this, so we can see some pretty good evidence of increased voter turnout, and especially we see some really strong evidence that voters who do vote in these systems are really much more satisfied. The Kansas Democratic Party actually used this in its primary elections this year. Now, by the time we got to Kansas, the election was mostly over, largely because of COVID caused changes and so on. But in that election, they did some surveys and they found that the voters in Kansas, the Democrats who used ranked choice voting, were really very satisfied, more satisfied than those in other states. There's another thing that goes on, and this is especially for me as someone who really hates to see fighting within my own house, to see people engaging in that kind of really bitter campaigning with people on their own side in primaries. What we found in cities that use ranked choice voting is that there is less negative campaigning, and there's a solid underlying logic for that. I mean, if you can imagine an election like this one, where you've got three candidates, the candidate A and C really don't like one another. They're on opposite sides of the same party, maybe. But what happens in those elections? Where do you get the most bitter, negative campaigning? Well, candidate A knows that he's going to not have an easy chance pulling off voters from candidate C. So where do you get those voters? Well, you pull them off from candidate B. And so, candidate A is going to portray himself as great. And where's the candidate A's ire going to go? It's not going to go to candidate C, because those voters are kind of out of reach. It's going to go toward the nearest candidate, like someone he might be friends with in daily life, because of the way that our system causes you to look for voters. What ranked choice voting actually lets you do is to minimize some of that tension. There's always going to be tension, even within a party. It's still a big party. It's a big house with lots of different sides and factions. But at the very least, what we need to do is allow candidates who are similar to say to their voters, hey, I know you might like candidate B first, but if you can't bring yourself to vote for me, at least vote for candidate B first and vote for me second. What it tends to do is to cause people to actually work with other candidates, especially those closest to them, rather than working against them. And so what we find in the cities that have done this, and we've done studies now in 7 cities, is that you get less negative advertising, you get more actual civility in those campaigns, and voters report that. They see the campaigns and the elections being better off, and being less bitter, less violent in those circumstances when you use ranked choice voting. And because the barrier to entry in these kinds of elections is lower, because people don't have to be one of the top 2 candidates in order to even get someone to think about voting for them, we actually see more people running, and we see more representative actual results. So we get more women and people of color actually running in these elections. A couple of different studies have found that. And we actually get more women and people of color winning in those elections. So what you get when you do ranked choice voting is, in addition to solving that spoiler problem and the wasted vote problem, you actually get just a lot better results in a more positive way, with turnout and satisfaction, and less negativity and more representative results. At least that's what the evidence would suggest. I want to stop for just a second, because I've been steamrolling through this, and just see if anybody's got any questions.
I know that Ray Wirt has a question.
Yeah, Ray.
Hey, so this is really, really interesting and really, really cool. I've got 2. One of these questions might not be as germane yet until you're done.
Sure.
I wanted to ask about sort of practical, tactical on on given that you're talking about a much higher bar for entry on a ballot initiative moving forward because of the numbers from the last couple of elections. Like, what are sort of the plans on how you're going to be able to achieve signatures? Number one, and then number two is also is the thought process here ranked choice for primaries and general, or just primaries? And then I think the third question is I think what's going to be, it's already been very, very difficult to try to explain early voting to people. What would be the plans on educating for the electorate on what this means? Because I think one of the problems that we've had even in the ballot initiatives for despite the fact that this was absolutely amazing that we got all these great ballot initiatives on expansion of the vote passed. What we probably should have also been thinking about, and I've talked with Jim Lancaster about this a couple times, is what we should have had is we need to fund education programs as a part of that to make sure that people understand how to use it. So are you thinking about that at all? But
yeah, absolutely. And I'll go into that a little bit more, just sort of at the end. But I will say, so ranked choice vote, Rank My Vote is working on these exact questions right now. My job in a lot of ways is just to be a loyal foot soldier here. My job, my profession is as an educator. That's the only thing that I'm reasonably good at. So my job is to sort of get out and talk to these people, and I want to let the decisions about policy be made above about what that would actually look like in terms of whether this would be at the requiring parties or doing other things. The current plan, as far as I understand it, is to follow the MAINE example. So what MAINE does is to mandate this at statewide races, and then allow municipalities to make their choice. So this would mandate parties to do it. It would mandate the state Senate, the state legislature, and the federal races, and then provide the legal framework for localities to do this. So that would be I think the kind of bigger picture. As to how to get this out there, I think you're absolutely right, and the key is education. The model that Rank My Vote has been using is to really look at what Voters Not Politicians did. But the great news here, if you all can recall, at this point in its existence, and if we want to go for a 2022 referendum, constitutional amendment referendum, at this point in its existence, Voters Not Politicians consisted of Katie Fahey and about 30 or 40 other people trying to figure out what they even wanted to do. The nice thing here is that Rank My Vote has been around. We're building up chapters across the state. We're working on education stuff. I think I've got 20 some events this month, to talk to various people. So the idea is really to get the education out there. So, toward your question, this is exactly what we're trying to do right now, is to get started. In a lot of ways, this effort is a lot like what Voters Not Politicians did. It doesn't have quite the same visceral enemy. We can't point to these strange lines, so we got to sort of persuade people to see how their own system doesn't work. But at the same time, the barrier isn't usually, when we explain this to people, it's not usually, oh, that's bad. It's usually, oh, I'd never heard of that before. I have no idea what this is. So really getting that information out there, that is my job. My job with the organization is to start to train speakers to get out to as many organizations as possible. And I want to say, if anyone's out there, if we'll go to any group, anywhere to talk about this, I love to do it. And we've got a cadre of people who are learning how to do it. So, to get that information out there, but it's going to have to be a big effort, and you're absolutely right. And it's going to have to be explained well. It's going to have to be explained succinctly, and like we saw in the tail end of the Voters Not Politicians campaign, the other side, whatever that other side sort of ends up being, is going to caricature this. They're going to misrepresent it, and you've got this problem of how to do it. It's interesting to look at what happened in Massachusetts. This was on the ballot in Massachusetts, and they came within 5% of getting this through. And I think what really killed them was COVID. This is the kind of thing that actually takes a little bit of time to explain, but if you can get that news out there, I've encountered almost no one who, when they've had this explained, has said, I don't want that. most people are like, yeah, that's a pretty good idea, but it does take a little bit of effort and time to explain. And I think that really is the biggest challenge, right? It's how to get something that is fairly complex out to a broader audience. What we're trying to do right now is to start to talk about this to larger and larger groups and to get feedback from all of you about how should we talk about this. So I'd love to talk to you about, whether this works. This is obviously the long form version for people who are so into politics that they're willing to spend a Saturday morning, at a Democratic club. And our idea is we do this as an accordion. We can do this in 30 minutes, or we can do this in 3 minutes or 30 seconds, just to get that message out there. I don't know if that responds to what you were wanting to know, though.
I think that helped. I think that it'll be. I think it's probably best to hear the rest of your presentation, because again, I feel like I was jumping ahead a little bit on the questions. But yeah, that definitely helps.
Okay, yeah, and no problem. Honestly, these kinds of presentations are best done when people are enthused about the question. And if you've got that question, so does everybody else. So I just appreciate you bringing it up. Does anybody else have any questions? I'm going to just actually, the next two sections are really short, but let me stop now and just see.
I do see a few raised hands.
Yeah, let's just do these now.
Okay. Paul and Tina Curtis.
Hey, thanks, Kevin, for this presentation. And speaking of feedback on presentation, this is kind of my question. Getting the human mind that is settled into something and comfortable with it, because they're used to it, to go, oh, wait, maybe this isn't okay. Maybe this is actually better,
Right.
The human mind, I think, will be, and it has to do, I think, with the human mind's kind of lazy. It likes what it likes and just settles in, right?
Right.
How do we get it to move when I think our tendency as humans will be, yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is too much trouble, all this, I'm lazy, I don't wanna.
Right.
In your presentation, and this, being a loyal foot soldier, you want to give it its best, side all the time. But what is the defeater in your presentation? How do you anticipate whether a nefarious other side of this discussion, or even just the laziness of the human mind? How do you start to beat the objections before they're even raised, since we kind of have the advantage of being first into the space, right? There is an organized opposition. So
that's right.
Cut it off at the knees. What are your thoughts about that in presentation?
Paul, that's an awesome question, and I really appreciate you bringing that up, because that really is the kind of thing that we face. I mean, the first thing that I love what you said about if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because it's broke. I mean, you look around, and we're not gathering the kind of information that we need. People are disgusted. They sort of tune out. I mean, I'm talking here to a group of people who are really passionate about it, but most of the time, I'm talking to people out there who hate it. They hate the requirement of having to vote for one or the other, and they're just really they're kind of grossed out by the overall system. And so I mean, I think there is a sense in which it is broke. There is a sense in which we do need to focus on that, and there's a sense that we can bring more people into the political system if they feel like they have a choice. That's a way to get more voices into the actual system. In terms of the defeater that you bring about, I mean, what are the big things that I hear? When I hear people sort of going after this and attacking it. I mean, the first thing, like I said, the biggest defeater is ignorance. It's not ignorance as per se, that implies some culpability, but it's just lack of awareness of this. That's the biggest thing, right? The thing that can defeat this is that people have never heard of it. So the first thing that we do, the defeater is getting out there and actually talking to anybody who'll listen. The second thing that comes up quite a bit is the complexity that's required. And so one of the things, and actually, in a different presentation to different kinds of groups, I go first for the how this works. I figured with this group, you all want to hear some of the other stuff first before I go into the mechanics. But the first thing that I often need to show people is how simple this actually is. So that's really the big challenge there. But once people see this, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And interestingly, some of you may have heard, this was used in East Point, actually, imposed by court order to remedy a situation in which an African-American significant, well, a plurality really, had never gotten any seats on the East Point Council. And so a judge imposed this as the solution. We sent a bunch of people there to talk to voters who for the first time had used ranked choice voting, and they came out of it saying, yeah, that made sense. There was no problem. Some people didn't even notice that the system had changed. They just took it for granted. The third defeater, and the thing, and actually it's why I really am enthused to talk to all of you, is that I think some people do perceive this as a threat to one of the two major parties. Where this has worked, I think it's succeeded because, at least one of the two major parties, if not both, have been able to embrace this as an improvement to how democracies operate and not see it as a threat. And I think it is true that, if you've got the ability of voters to opt for smaller parties, that major parties can see that as a threat. For the Republicans, they see this as a threat because some of their voters might defect over to libertarians. Some Democrats can see this as a threat because some of their voters might opt over to the Greens. My own thought on this is that, one of the things we do as a political party is we try and reach out, we try and persuade people of our position. If voters have more options and we have to work harder to do that, then that's our job. That's what we need to do. The second response there is to really, sort of show the people who are committed to one of the two major parties that this doesn't pose an existential threat. It makes the work a little bit harder, and none of us, want to have to work any harder. But at the same time, it also allows us to reach out to people who are on the same side that we are, but don't necessarily feel like they can cast their first choice ballot for a Democrat when they'd rather vote for a Green. So I spend a good amount of time talking to Greens. As a Democrat, I don't understand vote. I understand a lot of Green ideas. I think if I were in another, system with a multi-party kind of configuration, I might be tempted to vote for a Green party. In the current way that America works, I don't think I can countenance doing that, but there are a lot of people who would vote for that instead and split that vote. And so I think what we need to see in that kind of third level of, how do we defeat opposition, is that for the Democratic Party, for the Republican Party, really this is a way of at the same time kind of allowing people some more choice, but at the same time being there, being able to appeal to them as the second home. So if you have to vote Green first, then vote Democratic second, and it gives you the chance to do that. So that's kind of, I think, how I would respond to those things. We're still kind of working on this, so I would love to hear from all of you, actually, and you can just drop it in the chat, or you can let me know, or if we have time, we can talk about it. But, sort of how this strikes you and what you see as the things we need to be talking about. Does that get at what you were looking for?
Oh, okay. Paul's got a thumbs up there. So we're starting to run a little bit long.
Yep.
So what I thought is maybe you could complete the presentation and we'll see
Absolutely.
if that answers the remaining questions. And
yeah, and this is literally 4 minutes. So I see Michael's got his hand raised. Let me just finish, Michael, if it's okay, and we'll go from there. So let me get back to my slides. And just say, so, one of the big questions people have is often the mechanics on this. So, how does it work? And in the current system of, of how we vote, basically you get your list, you get to vote for a particular candidate, and that's all that you get to do. And this is kind of silly if there's a mechanism, because all of us have in our heads, we have multiple rankings. We know that just because we can't get what we want, we don't storm out of the restaurant, or we don't quit Netflix because they don't have the movie. We do something else. And so if you remember the old, this is your brain on drugs. Well, we have this complicated circuitry of what we like, what our preferences are. But when we go in on election day, we get an up or down vote. That's all we get. Ranked choice voting fixes that because it simply regards that first thing as your first choice. So, you like candidate B, not because you don't like anyone else, but because you like candidate B best. What ranked choice voting does is simply on the ballot adds another column for every candidate who's running. So I like candidate B first, but I like candidate C second, and I really don't like candidate A very much, so I'm going to put them third. And that's the whole mechanics of voting. For every candidate, there's a column. You put your first choice in the first column, your second choice in the second column, your third choice in the third column. And studies show that while this, this looks, it's more complicated, it's different than what we do now. And you're right, there is a certain kind of laziness. It's not complicated. And people do this without thinking about it in every other realm of life. My kids pointed out that in Jackbox games, which they're playing right now, there are forms of ranked choice voting, all sorts of other stuff. Like, this is going on constantly. We're constantly doing it. The Oscars use this. It's not that complicated, right? And what you need to do then is to make this work, you need actually a system of counting. And that's sometimes what people have trouble with is, well, how would you count those additional preferences? I'll give you one example here. I could go into a bunch of other examples. This is actually an example that's nice for Democrats. I still run this when I'm talking to Libertarians or Republicans or Greens, but so this is Maine now uses this statewide. In 2018, Maine had a race in which 4 candidates ran. In that election, you had a Republican, a Democrat, and 2 independents. In the first round, in the list of first preferences, the Republican Poliquin had slightly more first preferences than any other candidate, but he didn't have a majority. And so what ranked choice voting points out is, if you don't have a majority, it could easily be that there is a majority against you. So how do you figure that out? Well, in this case, all you do is you take the candidate with the least chance of winning. In this case, excuse me, sorry about that. It's Will Hoare, and you look at his votes, and you look at who his voters would have voted for second, because you've asked them actually on the ballot. And then all you do is you take those ballots, and literally you can do this in person, but you can do this on a machine. You walk those ballots over. So you pretend that Will didn't run. Who gets Will's second place votes? Well, mostly it's Tiffany. That makes sense. And independents vote for another independent. A few vote for Poliquin, a few vote for Golden. But still nobody's got a majority. So we look inside Tiffany's ballots. She's now got 19,000 votes. That's the decisive margin. And we look inside there. And what we see is that, there are some of those voters who say, if I can't have one of these, I don't want anybody. But it turns out that the vast majority of Tiffany Bond's voters would prefer Golden to Poliquin. And so when we finally add those up, what we see is that the side that should have won in this election is the bluish side, not the orangish, not the reddish side. And so it's a simple mechanism. All we do is we pretend that the lowest ranking candidate didn't run. We look to see who those voters would have voted for if the candidate hadn't run, and we redistribute those to their second choice, or later on to their third choice, and so on. That's super simple. All of the machines that we have in the state are capable of using it. And so it's just a really regularized process. Maine's now been using this for 2 federal election cycles, but cities across the country have been using this for much longer with no scandals, no problems, nothing. So let me just give you a sense of that, actually, where this is being used right now. So Maine, we talked about, has been doing it. They voted in 2016. They've been doing it. Alaska just voted in 2020 to use this. They're using a slight variant on this, in which there's an open primary, and the top 4 candidates in the primary go into a ranked choice voting in the general election. But we also see literally dozens of cities are using this. And they're from all over the country. And what's really interesting to me about this is this is not a blue state thing. This is not a red state thing. I actually had a kind of bizarre but interesting conversation with the former head of the Utah Republican Party. They love this. Other parties really like this because it allows them to take care of those internal party decisions without creating that kind of factionalism that pulls parties apart. So a bunch of cities have used this in the most recent election in 2020. We actually saw 5 new cities adopt this. What's kind of interesting to me is that the cities that adopt this tend to be cities nearby other cities that have done this. So a bunch of California cities have seen this being used in San Francisco and Oakland. A bunch of Minnesota, suburbs of Minneapolis have started using this. So people seeing it, when they see it get used, they think, I want some of that as well. And one of the really interesting things actually for me was that in Portland, Maine, they used it for a few offices. That was actually the spark for getting Maine to use it overall. But in 2020, they actually had the chance to use it for all of the city's offices. And they voted for it, having already had it for some offices. They actually voted 4-1, 81% voted to expand it. And that to me is really encouraging. Like when cities have this, other cities want it, and cities that have it want more of it. So we see that Michigan actually, has used this. It's been used in Ann Arbor. Ferndale's got it on the books, but the voting systems won't work. And I talked a little bit about East Point. Arvind, you were going to say.
Well, it's just we're running quite a bit too late.
I got it. So yeah, so this is really, it's used in a bunch of primaries, a lot of Democratic primaries. New York's going to use it. It's actually used in a bunch of states' mechanisms and processes. There are organizations around the country, 27, 28 states have organizations that are doing this, and Michigan is one of them. So Rank My Vote is one of those organizations. So that's really the kind of, what I wanted to talk about. We've talked a little bit about how to do it. We're at this position now where, we're looking toward a 2022 constitutional referendum. The standards are going to be higher because more people voted in the gubernatorial election in 2018. That's a luxury problem because it means a lot of people are out and voting, but it does raise the stakes. Rank My Vote has been getting out there kind of ahead of the game and trying to work on this. So the idea is to get the ballot wording done this year, get the petitions and signatures gathered this year, and then constantly to do what Ray was suggesting, just constantly educate, constantly get people aware of this so that by the time we get to that final 2022 phase, if those signatures are gathered, that we can get it done. I've abused my time, and I'm really sorry to take so much time. I get a little into this, and I don't want to go too far. But
no, this is thank you very much. It was a very interesting conversation, but unfortunately, we have to try to
totally understand. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, just let me know. I'll make sure Arvind's got my information. I'm sorry for going long, and I'd love to continue this in some other forum.
Yeah, thank you. And if anyone has questions, please just pop them in the chat. Our Lauren is here. So what I would like to do now, in the spirit of Cincinnatus and Tom Regan, I would like to yield power as soon as possible to our newly elected chair, Lauren Jasinski.
Look. Good morning, everybody. Sounds like I missed something important, so thanks for being patient with me as we kind of move around. It would totally figure, right, that in the spirit of 2020, that I don't have plans for 10 months and then two very important things end up on the same day. So it's really good to see all of you, and I'm honored to accept the nomination and vote for chair. And so we're really looking forward to moving on to 2021. So thanks to Dr. Kevin Deegan-Krause for that time and all that information. Obviously, it's a really interesting and important issue to us. We'll talk more about bar night at the end of the meeting, but one of the things that Arvin and I would like to kind of try doing is to have a monthly bar night that's sort of inspired by whatever our monthly meeting was. So if anyone wants to get together with us and continue talking about some of these things, we're going to do so on a regular basis at the end of the month. So that's a spot for us too. So I just want to kind of keep us rolling. We're going to go launch right into Democratic Party updates. Is there anybody here that has some information for us about the Democratic Party? Paul, are you here? Do you want to talk about the precinct meeting?
Yeah, Lauren, I did mention that the precinct delegates are going to be meeting on Monday night, and thank you for your willingness to host, so appreciate that. Yeah, we'll be, and I acknowledge that we'll be joined by Nicole Beatty and Mona DeQueese. So yeah, looking forward to meeting, discussing the 2020 election and how do we build our base going forward. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Good. We're looking forward to it. Paul is doing a great job in building up our precinct delegates and making sure that they're effective. Do we have any other Democratic Party updates? Anybody here? No?
Just
Thanks, Rick.
nothing more than, for OCDP, nothing more than what was said earlier under announcements. Meeting on Tuesday for executive committee members. Please come and show support for the incoming committee chairs. So.
Great. And I don't know if that was already done, but Ray, if you want to share the join information for that, I don't know if it's a Mobilize app or just a link. You can maybe put that in the chair if anyone is, or in the chat if anybody is interested. Okay, elected officials report. If you want to go ahead and raise your little blue hand, we'll line everybody up and welcome our local elected officials. State Senator Mallory McMorrow, why don't you go first?
Hey everybody, so obviously this was a week, right? So it's December 40th, 2020 is the way that I think about it. We haven't moved into 2021 yet. You know, I think first of all, just want to address what happened in DC. It was really, really surreal and terrifying and hard to watch. And I've talked a lot about it this week. So I had a virtual coffee hour yesterday, and I will pop a link into the chat if anybody missed that, that you can watch. I also spoke with WDET, did an interview that posted. But my stance at this point is that anybody in the Republican Party who has been complicit with this, who's continued to fan the flames of the fact that our election was stolen, needs to be held accountable. And I'm going to keep pushing that, because at this point, you're either for the United States or you're against it. So you'll hear my messaging that these are not even far right extremists, because I think what we saw in the Capitol is they don't care, right? They don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. They are Trumpers. They are anti-government extremists. They believe in QAnon. They believe in conspiracies. And the most terrifying thing for me was, yes, a lot of what we saw in the Capitol was sort of stupid, but there were ex-military members in there with zip ties. They built gallows outside with nooses. And for those of us who are here in Michigan and who are in the Capitol, it felt very familiar, because this is what happened in April. April was the demonstration in Lansing where we had heavily armed men sitting behind my head with guns, taunting us in the Senate gallery. And they were allowed to go home in April. And then we saw that same group of men organize and start to recruit and get more organized and put plans in place to kidnap the governor, storm the Capitol, take hostages, and carry out mass executions. And if the FBI and the Attorney General hadn't foiled that plot, who knows what would have happened. So that is my concern right now, is that what happened this week in DC is not the end, it's the beginning. And if we don't hold everybody accountable who let this happen, it will keep happening. So that's where I am. Like I said, I've talked about this a lot this week, so I'll post some links if anybody wants to follow up. Also in our virtual coffee hour yesterday, our original scheduled programming was talking about what happens on my maternity leave. We've been getting a lot of questions in our office about how that works. So we did a whole coffee hour yesterday to introduce my entire team to people and just talk about how the sausage is made and what happens in a legislative office. And, you know, the fact that there is no proxy voting or remote voting in Michigan. I have to physically be in Lansing to cast a vote. So on the political side of things, you will likely see attack ads against me when I'm up for re-election because I've missed votes. But frankly, bring it on, because if they want to attack somebody for having a kid and being a mom, I think that works to our advantage in the same way that ads in 2018 about me maybe having a curling iron kind of backfired for being blatantly sexist. So check that out. I think it was really interesting, and I was really honored to introduce my team to everybody and kind of show how everything works. So that was really interesting. And then finally, vaccine update. We're getting a lot of questions about that. So here's what I know so far. Rollout is rough, right? I think that, let's just say that right off the bat, it's really frustrating to try to figure out, where am I in line? How do I sign up for an appointment? Where do I get answers? The state of Michigan has received a little over 500,000 doses of the vaccine. And when the state receives them, they don't hold on to them anywhere. So there's no storage within the state that the state holds. They immediately push out every single dose to hospitals, local county health departments, CVS or Walgreens, which is currently helping to administer them in long-term care facilities and long-term care facilities directly. So they're all out. But what that also means is that the logistics challenge is there, right? I don't think anybody anticipated that when phase 1A, which is that kind of first phase was frontline healthcare workers, that there was a large number of frontline healthcare workers who didn't want to get vaccinated throughout the state, particularly outstate. So that set up an issue where a lot of these vaccines were sitting in hospitals. They weren't going into arms because people didn't want them and they were at risk of expiring. So when you saw those numbers and all the reports about the fact that Michigan hasn't administered enough doses, it's because the state of Michigan couldn't override federal guidelines on who's prioritized. So now we're playing catch up, right? So you heard the state announce that the pool of eligibility has expanded. So now it's residents 65 and older, it's additional frontline workers and teachers as well. But now it's a supply issue. So we don't have enough supply to make sure everybody who's 65 and older can sign up. And Michigan Medicine put out an email yesterday that said that even within their hospital system, it's going to take 3 to 4 months for them to vaccinate everybody in their system 65 and older. So it's going to take time. We are sharing as much information as possible. It really just depends on how much we get from the federal government and how quickly it can get out. I know that people trying to book appointments through Oakland County can't get them, through Beaumont can't get them. Beaumont originally opened it up through their app and then pulled back because they were overwhelmed. So now they are sending out letters to people when it's time for you to sign up. But we had a graphic that we shared out yesterday that laid out the timeline. So it's depressing. I'll be the first one to say that, you know, this is a timeline throughout all of 2021. The state's goal, given our current supply, so this may change when the Biden administration comes in, but given the current supply that we are scheduled to receive, 70% of Michigan's population is scheduled to be vaccinated by the end of 2021. So, you know, I said very candidly yesterday, I hope to get vaccinated by my birthday, which is August 23rd. And I think level setting some expectations with people is helpful is not the right word, but I think we have to get in that mindset. The positive thing is we know how to stop the spread of COVID-19. We've been doing it for a year. Wear a mask, wash your hands, limit your trips. I think getting us into that mindset that that's not going to change overnight. It's going to take some time. Obviously, my hope is the Biden administration comes in and ramps up manufacturing and distribution and has a more straightforward plan. But to answer some of the questions we've been getting, it's not that there's a lack of people to administer the vaccine. There's plenty of people within the hospital system and CVS and all of that. That's not the issue. It is a supply issue right now. And frankly, it's a communications issue. So I'm going to keep reporting back to the state from what we're learning on the local level. Hopefully we can improve that communication. I know the county's really working on this. And I think there are some best practices from around the state that we can learn from. I think the TCF Detroit distribution plan, where they're going to inoculate 200,000 people 65 and above at TCF in a drive-through in a day. I think that's fantastic. If we can replicate that in the county somehow, I think that would be great. On the west side of the state, many of their hospital systems and counties have partnered together to do a regional kind of approach to it, where people can sign up through one website, put in their email address, and they know that they will get an email or a notification when it is their time to sign up for an appointment. I think that's something that we could learn from as well. But I appreciate everybody's patience. Like I said, if you're not following our Facebook page, please do. We're going to share whatever we know as soon as we know it. And I know a lot of people are responding to us, sharing their frustrations. I hear you. I get it. I wish there was more that we could do. But it's bumpy in the upstart, but I think just getting into that mindset, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time, and we're going to do our best to get through it. So with that, I'll leave it. And if anybody has any questions on those things, let me know.
We appreciate the information. As always, you're doing a great job keeping us informed during a very, very difficult time. So we appreciate it. We're looking forward to the new little Democrat. We're gonna hold off on questions from everybody kind of as we go, because we have a lot of officials to hear from. If anybody wants to type questions directly to Senator McMorrow into the chat, I'm sure she can, you know, provide some information there as well. So with that, Representative Ellison.
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, just kind of tag team on to what Senator McMorrow has been saying. We're getting ready to gear up for the 101st legislative session. We're all impacted by what happened at the Capitol on Wednesday. I know we've been talking at caucus. I have with my caucus, fellow caucus members, and we've expressed our concern. And so as an update, I believe it was yesterday, the day before yesterday, our new Democratic leader, Donna Lazinski, has submitted a letter to Speaker-elect Jason Wentworth demanding that the 18 people that signed on to these lawsuits or participated in any of this silliness not be seated if they're going to claim that the election was false, and how can they say that they were legally elected to their seats? So we've got that letter out there. We don't expect it to get much traction, but we are going to insist also, and I have been insisting, that none of these people be appointed to committee chairs if they can't follow our Constitution and follow the rules, and they have no right being leaders on our subcommittees. So we are working on that line. We want to try to hold these people accountable as best we can. But again, the situation is basically the same. We have leadership in the House that didn't change, unfortunately, and too many of these ultra right wing. We've got Matt Maddock in our caucus, in the Republican caucus, and he was at Washington D.C. leading this charge himself along with his wife. So yeah, there's some pretty rough feelings. We're all pretty unhappy with these groups of Republicans that signed on to that foolishness. But we'll see. We go back in session next Wednesday. We are extremely concerned. As I think someone may have seen my Facebook post the other day, we selected our seats, and it's the first time I've ever had to select my seat with a mind of where I'm going to be out of aim of a gun. So it's a tense situation. And then on top of that, we're still dealing with the COVID-19. Another one of our colleagues, Abdullah Hamoud out of Dearborn, tested positive. He's now in quarantine. And so, this disease continues to happen. It continues to ravish our state and our cities and it's not over yet. That being said, I know there's a lot of hope for the governor lifting the restrictions. They're scheduled to be lifted by, I think it's next, was the 15th through 16th. We're not getting any indication that it's going to be extended, but we're also not getting any indication it's going to be lifted. So I think we're all just kind of waiting it out to see what happens and try to get life back to normal. But yeah, so there's nothing to talk about legislatively because we haven't been doing anything. And once we get back up there, I think it's going to be try to catch up, try to get legislation in there that we need. Just from my perspective, we did get the final report on the green ooze that happened a year ago in Madison Heights, and Eagle has come back with 11 items of attention that we need to do. So we're going to go through that next week and find out what needs legislation and what just needs procedure changes, and try to wrap that whole mess up. I will say this though, that the Capitol Commission, which is the group of Republicans and Democrats and other interested parties that control what happens in the Capitol building itself, they are meeting emergency session Monday morning, and they're going to discuss guns in the Capitol. So we'll see. I mean, we'd love to get guns out of there. The truth be told, that vast majority of my Republican colleagues and some of my Democratic colleagues are already concealed carry. They bring their weapons into the House. They are on the floor with their weapons armed and loaded. So that's the battle we're fighting. If we can get them to keep the long guns out of there, keep the rifles out of there, the assault rifles out of there, and then we've lived with the concealed pistols, and we can continue to do that. But it's not a pleasant place to be right now. But we still have a job to do, and we're all going to go up there and do it to the best we can. We've got a bunch of new people that are coming in, unfortunately, literally under the gun, to try to get their jobs done. So, I don't want to sound like the pessimist, but it is hard to be enthusiastic when you know that this isn't over yet, and until we've got the president-elect inaugurated and a new course of governance in Washington D.C., I think we're all going to living in a state of discomfort. But Anyways, that's all I've got. Anybody has questions, they can post them on the chat. We'll try to catch up on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Representative Allison. And on a slightly later note, somebody had an important birthday this week. So happy birthday, Jim. We would sing, but we know that doesn't work well.
Well, yeah. I mean, I turned 69 here on whatever it was, whenever my birthday was, Thursday, I guess. But now qualifies me for getting my vaccine, because I was qualified before, but now they made it really official. So, but again, I'm taking the attitude that when they tell me it's my time to get it, I will get my vaccine. I'm not going to step in front of any frontline workers or anything like that. Just because I'm an old man, I can live through it. So, thank you.
Absolutely. Yep. Happy birthday. We've got City Commissioner Kyle DeBuck.
All right. Good morning, everybody. It's really good to see your faces. And like Mallory said, it's been a really trying week. I think we all got some whiplash from the elation of Georgia to then, watching an attempted coup at the Capitol. But on a more positive note, I'm trying to be enthusiastic, or I'm feeling optimistic about, our two senators, Gary and Debbie are going to be big honking deals in the coming Congress. And, we're going to have a chance to advocate for some really good public policy as opposed to just trying to prevent the end of the world. So that, that makes me feel good. And I hope you guys are jazzed about that. Speaking of public policy on the city front, well, first, welcome to Monica Hunt. Yeah, she's going to be an awesome addition, you guys. I'm really excited to work with her and for the voice she's going to bring to the table. So, please, extend her congrats to her and, get to know her a bit. I'm sure we'll be seeing her at club a lot more. So a couple things I know we're going to have cooking right away. We talked about a community benefits policy. It was actually at the end of 2019, right when we were in the midst of the city manager transition or surge. We unanimously voted for staff to bring us some sort of policy where whenever there's city resources being put into something, or we're granting some sort of privilege like a zoning change or a PUD, that we want a specific list of criteria that they're going to have to meet. One of these things is affordable housing. Is it senior friendly housing? Is it platinum LEED certified building? Is it a labor friendly building, or a living wage, and employee friendly business that's being built there? So that's been in the works. Our new city manager, actually, it hadn't even been on his radar. I reached out to him about a month ago, paying him on it. So he's following up with staff. They're going to come back with some recommendations. So I hope you guys will engage in that conversation, because I think that's going to be a really important policy for our community, particularly on the affordable housing front, which was the subject of last month's virtual bar night. We had a great conversation about, this needs to be a priority to make sure we're not a city where only people that can afford $500,000 houses can live. That's not a sustainable way to run a city. It's not the kind of city that we want to be. So more on that coming. And then also the Human Rights Council, which we had talked about last year, was also something that kind of got a little sidetracked by COVID in the transition, but it has been in the works. We've got multiple meetings with staff about it. There's currently some debate, some disagreement about whether or not, if it's built around the Human Rights Ordinance, which was enacted by the voters of Royal Oak, does the creation of this council also then have to go to the ballot? So there's some discussion around that I think we'll be having in a public meeting sometime soon. But that's also something I'm going to be hopeful that you all will engage on and help us build that out in a way that's really effective, really representative of the desires of our community and how we want to, use this not just as, a mouthpiece or a press hit, but really something that drives culture and this conversation, in Royal Oak. That is it. I'll leave the rest to my colleagues. Happy Saturday, everybody.
Thanks, Kyle. City Commissioner Melanie Macy.
Thanks, Lauren. So there's two other commissioners who are on the rolls here to talk, and I know we're running out of time. So I'm just going to say, first of all, welcome to Monica. I agree with Kyle. We're really excited to have her on. We're excited to have a full commission at operating capacity again. But I also just want to take my time to say thank you to Tom Regan and to recognize what he's done over his time as chair and as leader of this club. I want to say I live in Royal Oak, and for the first time ever, I can say I'm represented by 7 Democratic city commissioners, 2 Democratic county commissioners, 1 Democratic state rep, 1.5 Democratic state senators, a Democratic governor, a Democratic attorney general, a Democratic secretary of state, 2 Democratic U.S. senators, 1 Democratic U.S. representative, and in 2 weeks, a Democratic president. So Tom, that's a big change from when you took this on, and you deserve a lot of the thanks for that. So big appreciation, shout out to Tom, and that's all I got for today.
Whoop, there I am. I couldn't have said that any better. Thanks for that acknowledgement, Melanie. We've got a lot to be proud of as a club. Brandon.
Well, that's kind of gonna be hard to follow up on. So it's, you know, I want to hit on the national stage just one more time really quick. I mean, I spent a lot of time kind of just upset and shocked. I mean, it felt like 9/11 to me all over again. I was having those flashbacks to how I felt that Tuesday morning all over again. It was just, it was so disturbing to see these enemies who are, you know, domestic, not foreign, raiding our capital. But we go on as a democracy, right? And here we all are. I mean, how many Democratic elected officials we have here who are pressing on and doing the business of the people. And that's what we're all going to continue to do. So I'm excited for this next year. We're going to make sure that we have these ideals out there. And I think it's time for a change in tenor. I know in this election coming up, I really look forward to a lot of policies discussions, because I will talk to anyone all day about the policies Commissioner DeBuck just talked about. I want to talk to people about a community benefit plan for housing development and how to make that better. I want to talk to people about the human rights ordinance. Those are things I want to talk about all day long. I want to talk about character assassinations, go ahead, but that does nothing for the city. So I'm really looking forward to how we're going to continue moving Royal Oak forward in this next year, how we're going to help recover, because there will be a recovery needed. And everyone here right now, sitting in this Democratic Club meeting, this is the start of the recovery. I mean, this is how we start getting better right here, right now. So, you know, thank you to all of you for being here. There's almost 100 people on this call on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. So if you have any questions, reach out. I know we're all available. So thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Pat Peruk.
Good morning. Compared to what has been happening both at the national level and the state level, thankfully things in Royal Oak are relatively calm right now. But we're looking forward to a number of exciting things happening as the year goes forward, some openings. For example, the new police station is set to open, and the police officers are supposed to move in at the end of the month, so that is coming up. It'll be fully functional a couple of weeks after that, so that'll be wonderful to have happen. We just awarded a demolition contract for the demolition of the old City Hall and the old police station. As soon as the police officers move out of the police station, the demolition company will start with asbestos remediation, which is a necessary first step. And then the buildings will start to come down. Once they are down, then we can start construction on the new park, which will go where the buildings are now. That'll take some time. They'll probably have to do certainly some leveling and making sure that there are not things underground that shouldn't be there. Installation of underground utilities and so on, but you'll start to see the park come together over the summer. In terms of parks, Normandy Oaks Park is not officially open yet, but a lot of the facilities are ready to go. The building where the restrooms are and so on is ready to be open, even though it's locked. The trails are finished and in place, and there are a lot of people who are walking on them, even though the park isn't officially open. The sledding hill is in place, and it's been in use, even though technically the park isn't open. After that last snowfall we had, there were a lot of kids out there. So that's going to officially open this year. City Hall hopefully will reopen to the public when the pandemic calms down a little bit so that it can be reopened safely. But in the meantime, a lot of subcommittee and board meetings that were put on hiatus because we didn't have the capacity to have multiple Zoom meetings, especially happen simultaneously, because we only really had one person trained in City Hall that could administer a Zoom meeting with all of the public comment and public access and so on. Now multiple people in City Hall have been trained, so the schedule of like the Parks and Rec Board and the other boards and commissions that are non-essential, but certainly have important functions, are now going to start meeting on a regular basis starting in January. So that's an exciting thing. So we're kind of resuming a little bit of normalcy, even though the building itself is not open, and the City Commission will be meeting remotely for the foreseeable future, just because of that. But one exciting thing that will happen on Monday, even though we're going to be doing it remotely, is we will swear in Monica Hunt as our new City Commissioner. We're all excited about that. So you can view the swearing in at the beginning of the meeting at 7:30. Judge Derek Meineke is going to be doing the honors of doing that. So, and then we'll have, as you all have heard from other people, we'll have a full 7 members of the City Commission, which is what we need. So things are kind of moving along. We're continuing to adopt as the situation goes forward with the pandemic, and doing the best we can. But issues are still there. There's important issues that Kyle and others have mentioned. We're going to keep working on those as we go forward. And that's about it.
Thank you so much. Royal Oak School Board Trustee Marianne.
Things, we're remote through January 29th. The governor came out and this week and indicated that she would like to see students back in school by March 1st. At our board meeting this Thursday, the 14th, we'll be discussing the return to learn plan. And so please, let parents know to tune into that so they can see those conversations and what the proposed plans are. Looking forward to our staff being able to be vaccinated when those opportunities arise. I know many have been able to get into some of those slots. Also looking forward to when hospital systems will, get their approvals from the state to disseminate vaccinations. I'm looking at Mallory when I say that, because I know right now they're still not able to do that. So I know they're looking forward to being able to vaccinate the general public as well. And also just a thank you to the city. On the agenda for Monday is an acknowledgement of our educators and also the board members, but just an acknowledgement of our educators, which we're very proud of, all the work that they've been doing for the Return to Learn plan. So thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. School Board Trustee Tim Chikorsky.
Well, Marianne basically said everything that there is to say at this point. We, the new trustees, were effective January 1st. We've not been yet to a school board meeting. We will be on Thursday evening. And I do encourage everybody, please do come to that meeting. Do make your voices heard. Meeting is at 7 o'clock and the information should be on the school website. Again, thank you, everybody. Have a good Saturday.
Thanks, Tim. I see that we were joined by Dave Woodward. Do you want to give us an update from the county?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Congratulations, Chairman.
Oh, thank you. Yes. I'll just be very brief. We started off the year. I am incredibly optimistic on the progress that we're going to be able to make in 2021 and in the coming year. We had our reorganization meeting, and I'm incredibly honored to not only have the support of our caucus, but unanimously reelected to be chairman of the board for this next term. Setting up the structure of our board for the next 2 years and committees to focus on criminal justice reform, public health, economic development, and supporting our local economy is really excited to hit the ground running right out of the gate. We also made a couple firsts. We appointed the first person of color ever to the Oakland County Road Commission. This is a body of 3 people that oversee a $500 million annual budget. Nancy Quarles, our outgoing colleague, we appointed to fill the seat, giving Democrats a majority for the first time ever on the Road Commission. In addition to that, as a result of that, we have a pro-transit majority for the first time in the history of the Oakland County Road Commission. And someone just reminded me yesterday, it's the first time a majority actually come from cities. where most of the people live. So I think we look forward to some reforms and an opportunity to lift up some priorities that definitely shared by this group to move the conversation around infrastructure, but broadly around mobility and transit and a series of other things going forward. So we're really excited for that opportunity. And we're also kind of hitting the path running in terms of parks because of the millage that passed. A number of new funding available to help support building out the trail network. And Arv, I'm looking at you. We're going to pick up that conversation that we started almost a year ago. But there's actually dedicated funding to build out the trail network across Oakland County, fix the things that have been frankly neglected for the last 20 years. And also looking to some more partnerships. The Normandy Oaks is a classic example that we want to be able to take to scale going forward. And so we're putting some additional new members on the Parks Commission, and we're going to be able to advance that. And then lastly, I'll just wrap up kind of the Oakland County perspective on the vaccine stuff, and just to build off what our state senator and state rep have been talking about. Oakland County has the infrastructure and capacity to do the vaccines. Our issue is it's the supply. For those who want to get the vaccine in Oakland County, it's the nurse on call line through our health department. It's 1-800-848-5533. I'll put it in the chat too. Again, it's 800-848-5533. You've got to register to reserve. Now, right now, all the slots that we were overloaded as soon as the transition from 1A to 1B occurred. And as soon as we know what our supply is, more slots will open up. So that's just be patient. And as soon as we have them, we will deploy. But we've got the drive-by sites all across the county. And the nurse on call is there to help schedule people as soon as we have the supply, we will deliver the vaccine. So those things are happening, and stay tuned for additional information around that. Thank you. Thank you, Lori. And thank you, Tom, for your years of service to help get all us Democrats where we are today.
Thanks, Dave. I want to invite one last official to speak. Monica, not to put you on the spot, but are you in the meeting? Monica Hunt, we'd love to hear from you and have you introduce yourself so that we can officially meet you.
Sure. I did speak earlier in the meeting when it first started, but again, I'm Monica Hunt. It was just appointed to the commission. So I'm looking forward to working with the other commissioners. Everybody's been very welcoming, and am excited to start on Monday, being sworn in on Monday and starting to serve the residents of Royal Oak. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Just wanted to make sure everyone had the opportunity to hear from you. We're happy to have you, and really excited about your appointment. We had one final Democratic Party announcement. Mona Takui, do you want to jump on and say hello?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. Hello on behalf of the Michigan Democratic Party. I'm your regional political organizer, and I want to congratulate all the new officers. I'm looking forward, Lauren, to working closely with you and the rest of your team. And I want to congratulate all the newly elected candidates and those that did return, re-elected officers as well. Or public officials as well. So thank you everyone for the hard work. I want to thank the club for your hard work, your precinct delegates, your volunteers. We do have lists ready now for people that did volunteer for the coordinated campaign, and it's well over 300, and that doesn't even count everyone who participated in individual campaigns as well. So you really worked your hearts out, and we all really appreciate that. Tom, what can I say? I learned a lot from you. You were one of the most responsive and responsible chairs. I work in 8 counties, man, and I really enjoyed it. You are an activist chair. You're not just a chair who pounds that gavel. You're out there knocking doors, putting signs up. So that's my favorite kind of leader in terms of our county chairs and our club chairs. So I hope every other chairs can follow your example, because that was terrific. Everyone, we have a convention coming up February 20th, so you've got 30 days out to make sure you are a member of the Michigan Democratic Party so that you can vote. You precinct delegates, you recent candidates, you elected officials, of course, can join the party right up and renew your membership right up onto that day, the day of the convention. So I think that's about it. I look forward to being grilled on Monday. Thanks to Paul Weil, and I hopefully I'll be listening more than I'll be talking. So a lot of love to all of you. This is definitely one of the most amazing clubs. I mean, I'm telling you, as I said, I'm working in 8 counties. To get 100 folks on a Saturday is pretty amazing. So I think that's it. Thank you so much and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Mona. Representative Jim Ellison, you have more to add? Jim, you there?
Yep, I just had to unmute myself. I forgot to mention during my presentation, the governor will be giving her State of the State address on Wednesday, the 27th. Due to the COVID situation, it will be virtual. And details will be coming out later how you can watch that speech, but it will be scheduled for 7 p.m. on the 27th of January on a computer screen near you.
Good, thanks for that. We'll be sure to share all the details about how to watch that too. Any other elected officials reports, Democratic Party reports? No? Okay, seeing none, we'll just go ahead and kind of wrap up into our end of the meeting business updates, reminders, things like that. One thing that we skipped over at the beginning was our treasurer's report. So Treasurer Ian Duncanson, do you want to go ahead and let us know what's up with our finances?
Yeah, so we had in the month of December, $480 worth of dues paid, all of which goes toward this calendar year in terms of membership. We also had an expense for postcards for Georgia. The only expense we have accounted for currently is the stamps, which was $516.34. So we wrote all 5,000 postcards and got all of them mailed out. So we did pay for a bunch of the stamps and got a bunch from OCDP. So thank you to OCDP for those that you contributed as well. We'll have a little bit more money in the range of $500 to $700. I'm waiting on final figures for the actual postcards themselves. And so there are a few outstanding things for that. So we'll be waiting on that. But our current account balance, accounting for the money that will be removed for those stamps, is $3,502.87. Once we subtract the amounts for the remaining postcard expenses, we'll be at just probably just over 2,800, somewhere between 2,800 and 3,000. And then also we haven't accounted for any dues that have been received in January because I usually report them on a monthly basis. And even just since this meeting started, we've received about another $320+ plus. So we're in good shape going into this new year.
Thanks for that. That's nice to hear from Rachel. I think we were a little bit worried that people in Georgia were going to feel bombarded. So I hope that it made a difference. We're proud to have what had played any kind of role in helping Ossoff and Warnock win those seats. So it was a big news week this week. So we do need to acknowledge some of the positive things that happened as well. Kind of in the spirit of everybody acknowledging Tom Regan, I do want to take a second just to officially again say thank you for his time and handing over such a successful and resourceful club. We do have one of the most engaged and most active clubs in the area, and that's been acknowledged by a lot of different elected officials. And like we said, the proof is in our elected officials that we're making the changes and we're seeing the improvements around Oakland County that we want to and that we're dedicating ourselves to. So with that, I do want to just kind of make a little announcement about how we would like to acknowledge Tom. He is an incredibly modest person and I'm sure we'll be embarrassed by this. So I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. But one of the things that the board has been talking about for the last year or so is to start a scholarship to encourage young people to be more involved in the democratic process and to honor high school students that are hopefully going on to become engaged in this. And we're seeing more and more that we need young people involved sooner and sooner so that we have their voices. So I'm going to officially announce today the Tom Regan Community Activist Youth Scholarship. And we're going to work on the logistics of that moving forward, but we're going to acknowledge a graduating senior every spring to get that award from our club, and we think that that would be just a nice small way to acknowledge. Mona said it better than anybody, that he is not only just our club chair and not only just a proud Democrat, but he is an activist, and we think that that's an important part. We've talked a little bit about logistics so far. We think it will be pretty difficult to probably find a graduating senior who is an activist, has been arrested, and is a tap dancer, but we're gonna try our hardest to meet all those requirements to honor Tom. So we thank you for your time. We're going to do that. And we're going to look forward to kind of hammering out the specifics of that. Yeah, Ian.
And so just really quickly, because we do want to get this kick-started in time to issue a scholarship by the end of this semester. And given our current financial position, what I would propose, and I would like to make a motion, we can discuss it, modify it if people have any issues with it, is I would like to move to allocate $250 of our current club budget toward this scholarship, to be made up to $500 by donations, for which I will add an option on our Square site for those who are interested in donating to get it up to a $500 scholarship. And then once we reach that goal, we'll have a donation that will be available throughout the year that will accept donations to start building for the 2022 scholarship as well. That way we'll kind of kickstart it, have some money that's donated, and then look ahead to future years to do a primarily donor funded rather than dues funded scholarship. But given the time frame that we're at, I would like to propose that we contribute a little bit of money. And just personally, I feel like this is a great honor for Tom, but also is a great way to engage young people in our club locally and, recognize academic achievement as well. So that is my proposal. I move to allocate $250 toward the eventual scholarship.
I second that.
I second it.
Great, thanks for that second from Lisa Eileen Haynes. So there's a motion on the floor to allocate $250 of our club money to eventually hopefully be matched with another $250 from separate donations. All those in favor of beginning the scholarship with a $250 amount from our club, go ahead and raise your hand, say yes.
Yes.
Good. Sorry, there are reaction buttons in the participants window there. If you want to just go ahead and you can either raise your blue hand or click that red or click that green yes check mark.
Some of us don't seem to have that option right now.
Oh, sorry. Sometimes if you're on phone, it might not have those options. You can message me in the chat if you've got any concerns about that.
Hey, Lauren, can I ask, or I don't know if this is the right way to do it, that if folks is our goal to get it to 500 for this year, or are we just doing the 250? Because I'll donate $50 right now to help get that scholarship right where it needs to be. I think.
Yeah, so our goal will be to get it to 500, and if we're approving this money, either way, I'm going to put a link that's for the scholarship, specifically the scholarship fund, on our Square site, and we'll make sure to get that posted on Facebook and emailed out when that's available.
Okay.
Sorry, just real quickly, good clarification. So anybody opposed to us dedicating money to that scholarship? Cool, this clearly passes. So we officially have the Tom Regan Youth Citizenship Scholarship that's going to be awarded by our club in the spring. So yay! Yeah, it looks like some people are clarifying me. Sorry, some Zoom things have moved around, I think, just this week. So we'll get back into the hang of making sure that we explain all those things. I would like to invite one more person to the floor just real quick before the end of our meeting here. Belen Morales, we'd like you to speak a little bit about Taylor.
Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate it. I just wanted a moment to say a little bit about Taylor De La Rosa. She's a young woman from Royal Oak that died unexpectedly. She was also a 2020 Royal Oak High School grad. Oh, I don't think I can get through this. I was lucky enough to meet Taylor when she volunteered for my campaign. As soon as I met Taylor, I knew she was going places. She always had a smile on her face and had a passion for using her voice to make an unjust world more just. During our campaign meetings, she was often the last person to speak, but I always wanted to hear what she had to say because she always had great ideas. She was bright and insightful. I was genuinely excited to see her grow and see her build her future. Taylor had an optimism for the future that was contagious. I was 100% certain that she would change the world. She was the kind of person you wanted to push up the wall of injustice, because not only would she reach the top, but she would bring those behind her along with her. I apologize. I have a 3-year-old. Most importantly, I want to convey that Taylor was one of us. She was an activist and a crusader for justice. Our world has suffered a great loss, but Taylor's spirit will forever live in our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Belem. That was a really beautiful tribute, and it means a lot to us. We'll keep in touch with the family and the community moving forward, you know, as things, if there's any way for us to continue to support the work that she was doing. But we know that what we do here is so much bigger, right, than some of these votes and some of these conversations. And this is the kind of work that we need to continue to dedicate ourselves to. So thank you, Belem. With that, are there any final announcements, updates, anything else that we would need to speak about for this month? So we know that 2020 has been quite a roller coaster. We're looking forward to some more positive action during 2021. This first week has already been nothing but stressful. And so we're going to continue all of our hard work in these tough conversations, and we're going to do it together. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day. And we will see you in February. We'll be joined by Lakeisha Morrison. She's going to be celebrating Black History Month with us and talking about her family's history and involvement in Royal Oak, as well as her involvement as a BLM organizer. And so we're going to hear from her, and she's going to be our guest speaker for February. Looking forward to see you then. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, all. Good one.
Congrats, Lauren.
Thank you. Bar night. Shoot. Okay, well, anybody's still on the call? We've got bar night coming up. We're going to do it the 3rd Thursday of every month. So this month is the 21st. Actually, a lot of people left over our usual joiners, so it's always fun to see everybody.